So today we're going to talk about wowing them. When I was asked about what we wanted to entitle the day, I kept thinking, gosh, when I have ever done an interview, I want to differentiate myself so much that I wow them and that they have no decision that they have to make other than they know that they want to hire me. So the topic that we want to talk about today in our discussion, which I hope will be a bit of a discussion, and that if you have things that you would like to share, that you are feel more than free to be able to stop me and ask me a question if you so wish, because I certainly want to make sure that I cover everything that I have laid out to be discussed today. But I also want to hear from you, particularly if you've got questions and you've just never been able to figure out what the right answer might be. I want to make sure that we get those taken care of. And if not, in our conversation now, you can always email me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and otherwise, and I'm happy to help you however I might be able to help you, particularly when it comes to presenting yourself. Because we hear a lot today in our world about presence and gravitas, no matter what your title is. But when it comes to doing an interview, how do you present yourself so that you do wow them? So come on the journey with me. So I got the interview, right? What do I do next? And this always feels to me a bit like when I work with individuals who are going to go, say, with an interview with the media. They always think, gosh, you know, how could there possibly be any preparation? I mean, they're gonna ask the questions and I'm gonna answer them, which to me is very, very reactive. That is not necessarily the way in which we need to be talking to the media, particularly when we have a message to share. And the same holds true when you're going into an interview. You do want to make sure that you are thinking through all of the things that you need to be thinking through to make yourself successful. So preparation is critical to this process. So depending upon how much time you've been given, you need to be thinking about that preparation. I wanted to talk to you about knowing that preparation is so critical, because that really is the underpinning of today, the objectives of what I hope that we can get accomplished in our discussion. First of all, it's about giving that positive impression from a moment that you walk in the door, focusing on the words, again, so that they feel about you and what they feel about you, that you are that right candidate, and that you're exuding the right kind of confidence when you're speaking about all the things you want to tell them about, right? But it doesn't just become a me discussion. You do want to differentiate yourself so that you're remembered, whether you're the first person to do the interview who's been called in as candidates, or you're the last one, or you're the smack dab middle one. Also making sure that you're asking compelling questions in addition to providing strong answers. And then, okay, so what do I do post-interview? So hopefully we're going to touch all of these things as we walk through our time. So as I mentioned, preparation is key. And there are 3 different buckets that I want to touch on as we're talking about preparation, because it really is a little bit different. So first, about learning about the organization. You need to go about doing your research. Today, most organizations, whether they're for-profit or they're nonprofit, if you go on their websites, there is so much to consume when you go on their websites, whether they have white papers, whether they have case studies that they've worked on. Sometimes they even have a social media feed that is constantly refreshing and sharing with you information about a specific topic that might be important to the organization, or even a feed that is talking about the things that they're discussing on social media. So it's really important to think about going there and consume as much as you can. There's nothing worse than going in and thinking, oh, wow, I wish I had read that article because now this is part of the discussion and I have no context for what they're even talking about or questioning me. It looks like you didn't do the adequate preparation that you needed to. Also, go off from the website just on social media, because so many companies have embraced social media. I can remember back in my day working with a natural gas company, and we kept saying, you're going to have to dip your toe in the water and get out there, otherwise your story is going to be told for you. And so most companies have figured that out over time and see what kind of information they're posting. It may be things about their culture as they're looking for candidates for jobs, or it may just be talking about projects that they are working on as with their client base, depending upon, again, what type of organization that you are looking to get the position with. The next thing is going to be who is going to interview you. And it is okay to say, do you mind sharing with me when they call you, can you tell me who I'm going to be interviewing with? Is it going to be one person? Is it going to be 2 or 3 people at one time? Is it going to be a battery of people back to back to back to back? But you want to know who those people are so that you can do a little bit of research on them. Now, you don't want to be like, I'm stalking you, to where you see them and say, hey, I saw you on Facebook and, you know, you have 4 children and it looks like y'all went on vacation here, there, or yonder. Not that kind of information, but just really looking and seeing how active they are. Is there anything on their LinkedIn page about their bio that you might be able to pull? And it helps you understand the type of thinker they may be, which is then going to teach you and help you understand a little bit more about how you can be communicating most effectively with them. Last but not least, one of the things that you also need to be thinking about is, what do you want them to know about you? And I would say, begin with the end in mind. Don't make this so incredibly challenging because already you feel that bit of anxiety and, of course, the adrenaline of going for an interview, and it might be a make or break for you, the position you've always wanted, or you think it's just such a perfect position and you want to put your best foot forward. But what you need to be thinking about is, when I walk out of that room and I leave that interview, what do I want them to remember about me? And when I mean remember, of course, it's going to be all of the qualitative things, you know, how you carried yourself, what your body language was like. But also I want them to be able to recollect, okay, these are the things that they thought were important for us to know. And how do we line that up side by side with the other candidates? And why is this going to be the best choice for us, for our organization? I would say that you really need to sit down and you need to write this down. You need to hardwire it so that you can really and truly think about what it is that you want them to know about you. So preparation, it's really key. So let's move on to the next slide that we have, I think. Here we go. We want to make a positive impression. And I, of course, chose a picture of the handshake, right? There's a lot that goes on before the handshake, because this is really your time to shine. Some people say, well, what should I wear? Should I be in all black, or should I pull my hair back? Or what I would say is, wear something that makes you feel confident. Don't wear something that's going to be distracting. In fact, I had these massive earrings on with what I have on today, and I thought, I don't want my earrings to be so distracting that that's what they're trying to figure out about me on a screen. I want them to be focused on what I'm saying, not necessarily what I'm wearing. But feeling confident and comfortable, that's going to help you as well. Feeling comfortable, that is going to make you shine at that moment of your interview. You also want to make sure that you're prepared in the sense of, I'm going to bring resumes with me, even if you know that they've already received it. There's no telling that you might all of a sudden get pulled into a meeting while you're there for the interview because, you know, somebody's in town and they want to talk with you for a few moments, and they may have no idea who you are and what your background is. If you have a portfolio of work, you want to bring that as well so that you can walk people through your work if that's the nature of your business. And bring that paper and pen too. I know that sounds like the obvious, but sometimes when we're really nervous, we forget those obvious things, and you want to be taking notes while you're in the midst of your interview. I would suggest leaving your phone in your car. If you have a propensity of being distracted by your phone, or if you forget at times to turn the volume off, because that's something that can become quite a distraction. And if you do not realize the habit you have of looking down at your phone, especially even if it doesn't have any volume at all, but you recognize when all of a sudden a new screen is coming up because somebody's calling you or emailing you, even that subtle distraction of your eyes wandering makes it look like you're not as interested in what's going on and that there's a priority other than what's happening at this exact moment. So I would say that the phone needs to stay in the car, and if you need to take it out and you need to have it near you so you can see it, I would seek permission, in the sense that I would say something to the effect of, I have a sick child at home and I've left them with a babysitter, and I'm just concerned that I might get an emergency call. They know this is very important to me and would not call unless it were necessary, but I would like to share with you that that is my current situation, so that people understand that it's not just there for a convenience. I also would suggest treating the receptionist or the administrative assistant who welcomes you with deep respect and appreciation. I cannot tell you how many times I would walk out into the foyer after interviewing, and I would say, okay, so who's your pick? Who's your pick? Who was gracious to you, who was willing to visit with you? What do I need to know about them? And in that case, they would tell a lot of things like, oh my goodness, they were rude, or oh my heavens, I loved this candidate. They were wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But you don't remember that they're a team and they're all going to talk, no matter who's making the ultimate decision or not. And sometimes the receptionist can make or break it for a candidate. You may be really nervous, but you do need to smile. And if this is an issue because you're not one of those folks who just each day wakes up with a smile on your face, write it in your notepad. Write it at the very top of your notepad. Smile. So all of a sudden you have that opportunity to remember to do that, because I truly believe by looking at people in the eyes and smiling, it's like windows into your soul, and people begin to feel that really human side of you, because anybody that they're going to be hiring is truly what is going to make their brand what it is, because the brand is not a brand. It's the people behind the brand that make the brand the brand. And then lastly, and I know this, I always feel, I don't want to say embarrassed, but I always feel just a little bit awkward at times when I talk about shaking hands, because this seems like such an obvious thing that we do. But when you start getting a crowd talking about shaking hands, it really can become comical. The wet fish, the person who shakes your hand so hard that they're, trying to break your knuckles, or the half-hearted, like particularly sometimes men do not shake a woman's hand like as they actually should, which is just the way they shake a man's hand, and I think they're trying to be respectful. But when you shake a hand, you need to shake that hand with confidence, but you don't want to break their hand in half. Especially if there is an individual who is a little bit older, you want to be gentle because you don't want to, of course, hurt them in some way. Now, I want to just take a moment here, because a lot of what we are doing in our world, in fact, I've worked with a couple of individuals who've actually gotten hired because they were interviewing for a job, but today it's making it a little bit more difficult to get on a plane and go and do an in-person interview. So think about all of these things from the perspective of being on a Zoom call like this. You do want to be close. You do want your screen a little bit higher. You want to make sure that you know how to use the technology, so that if you are going to share a presentation, say if you're the second or third round in an interview and they want you to solve a problem for them and present it to the team, which I've done before in my history when we've been looking at candidates for jobs, that you are well equipped to know how to manage the technology in the conversation that you're going to be having. So it's one of those things. There are tips that are out there. They're not many, because we're not as primed about doing interviews by Zoom and getting hired that way. Usually you do have that chance to be in person. But I think our world is changing. And especially when the Facebooks of the world are allowing their employees to live wherever they want to live and work remotely, this could be something that we are facing in the future. So make sure that you are thinking about all of the pieces, the way you're sitting on the edge of your seat, the way you're closer to your mic, the where people can hear you and making sure that they can hear you. And then they can also see anything that you may be presenting to them. So it's your time to shine. Once you sit down, Of course, everything that you have just done, you're probably not even going to remember, right? I've gone in, let's say I have 3 or 4 people who are with me, and I don't even remember what their names are because I was more focused on what I saw, no different than they're doing with you, but likely they have a resume in front of them. If you don't have the names of the people in front of you because it was given to you on an agenda, I would take that moment to write them down on that pad of paper, even if you have to say, okay, I want to make sure that I know who each of you is. Do you mind telling me your name again? And writing it down in on that pad of paper or in the notebook that you brought, so that as you're having conversations, you can address people by their names as you need to address them. This will also help you post-interview, and we're going to get to that in just a little bit. So remembering names, it helps. So I want to go back to this conversation about preparation and knowing what you're going to say and why this is important. And I'm going to break this into 3 different categories again. So what do I want them to know about me? So when I said, when I walk away, I want them to be able to truly regurgitate, to say, these are the 3 things that I know are most important. This is a person who wants to be communicating and outwardly facing to our client base. This is a person who loves vision and strategy. I know that that's where their sweet spot is. That's in their wheelhouse, and we need that, not only on an execution side, but on an implementation side. Oh, and I've also learned that this person is highly encourages collaboration. And boy, do we need that here in this organization because our teams have become so siloed. Now, that would have been if you had sat down and told somebody, communication is my sweet spot. I love strategy and vision, and I also love collaboration. There's nothing better than winning together. Those 3 things, and talking in each one of those lanes about what you've done and how you've done it and what those successes are, that's important. But you don't want it to be like you have marbles in your mouth, and as you start talking, all of a sudden it's just kind of like flooding and you don't know where you are going. And that means you have to rehearse out loud sometimes, whether it's in the car, back and forth on errands that you're running in preparation for that big day, or maybe it's standing in your garage when everybody has gone to sleep in your house and you're just practicing how you're going to say it. It has to sound authentic. It can't sound rote. It can't sound like you're a robot. But it is important for you to make sure that it is very clear what is compelling about you. This can be difficult no matter where you are in your career to do that. There are all kinds of behavioral assessments that are out there. One of the ones in particular that I like in this space of going on an interview is StrengthsFinders. And I just say that because it narrows down what your true strengths are. So if somebody looks at you and says, well, what are you really good at? You don't sit there and think, well, gosh, what am I really good at? And you don't want to go, well, I don't know. You want to be able to go, this is what I really enjoy about any project I've worked on, knowing there are all kinds of different things that you have to do, but what is it that I love the most? What were those things that I went to first and foremost before I actually went to the other stuff, because this was my favorite stuff to do? So StrengthsFinders is a great assessment, behavioral assessment, to think about what do I want them to know about me? And then marrying that up with those examples or stories or lessons learned. A resume doesn't give you much opportunity to really share that authentic you and humanize yourself in the way that examples can truly support what your knowledge and your experience and your expertise is. And those literally bring to life sort of those headline statements about what they want to know about me. So if I want to say that I love strategy, what does that mean to me? Because how I define being strategic as a thinker might be different than the way the company defines it. I can remember in an interview looking for folks who could support me, like an admin support, and I would ask the question, many, many moons ago, I would ask the question, are you detail-oriented? And everybody, hands down, always said they were detail-oriented. And my level of expectation for what somebody can do from a detail-oriented perspective versus what many times they were thinking was black and white. It was completely different. And so you really do need to explain to the point of, communication is something that I love. You need to be able to then buoy that up with that story or the example that is really going to make it sing for them to go, oh yeah, that's what we need. They're a true collaborator. They know how to bring teams together that have been for so long siloed because of the way our business has been growing and evolving. So those are things that you need to be thinking about. Sometimes that's the hardest part. Like, I can figure out what to know, I want them to know about me, but then how do I make those live and breathe? It takes time in preparation. And then last on this particular slide, when it says questions you are likely to be asked, this is worth taking a pen and paper and writing down every question you think you could be asked that is relevant to the position for which they're hiring for. Because when they all of a sudden look at you and say, well, tell us a little bit about yourself, which is of course not a question, but it's a statement that is posed as a question. You don't want, once again, to be sitting and thinking, oh gosh, well, where do I start? How do I explain that? Because to me, you should be able to explain that, especially if you're on a journey to get a new job. You should be able to explain that pretty quickly and then move on to the next thing. The beauty of doing that is when you have figured the answers out to questions like that, as well as to the other questions that you would have on your list, when you get the zinger and you don't quite know what the answer is, it allows you to use your brain to really work to focus on the harder questions versus the, oh my goodness, let me use all of my brain power right now on a question that, gosh, I really should know, and they are expecting me to know what the answer to that question is. But it is worth writing the questions down that you think you could be asked. Will you get them all? No. But at least you begin to think, okay, if I'm asked this, because I'm not sharing this about myself, if I get asked, that is more information that I can provide that, once again, shows my knowledge and my experience and my expertise. Folks who do interviews will tell you that when they ask the question, so do you have any questions for us? Or do you have any questions for me? Or is there anything we can answer for you? Candidates will say, no, I think you've pretty much covered all of it. That doesn't make you as compelling of a candidate as somebody who says, as a matter of fact, yes, I do. In fact, I'm really curious about your culture. How do you define culture here? What is it that you would want me to know? Or what is it that you would want your clients to tell other folks about the culture here and why you should hire this company? Or talk to me about where you see this organization growing, or what are my opportunities for growth? Is this a position where I have opportunity to grow more than one or two levels? Or is this something where I'm here and I'm here for a very long time because there's no place for me to grow? What are the opportunities for professional development? Is there stuff that you all provide to your employee base? Is it something that I would need to go and search for? And is there a stipend for that? So there are all kinds of things, but you need to make sure that you come ready to answer questions and come up with enough of them to where if they all get answered, there's something that is there for you to say, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I'm curious about this, so that you engage them in conversation. Now, in looking at the objectives that I provided to you today, I talked about being that authentic person. And how do you balance being confident versus being boastful? I mean, it is just, and being arrogant. It is a tough balance because you don't want to sell yourself short, like, you know, oh, little me, oh, meek me, oh, humble me, I have never accomplished anything, versus the, I can do anything you ask me to do, and I can put my cape on and fly the blue skies and save the world. You have to have a nice balance between showing somebody that you have a can-do attitude versus it's all about me. And that's how I define confidence versus arrogance. Confidence is somebody who has belief in who they are, and a can-do attitude versus arrogance is I don't listen to anybody, I am always right, and whatever you give me, I can make it happen, and I don't need a team. So you want to be confident, you don't want to be arrogant. Some of the ways to be thinking about this, aside from the attitude that you have in the interview, is thinking about your body language. There's a great book called Presence that has been written by Amy Cuddy. You may know her name because she has one of the most widely watched TED Talks that is out there that does talk just even about animals in general and how they carry themselves like a lion, and how people, other animals are scared of those animals because they are, the king of their kingdom. We as people do the same thing in the way we use our body language. Sometimes we will cross our arms, we'll cross our legs, we'll take that notebook and we'll put it against our chest rather than opening our body up and being very welcoming to the situation. And this is a lot where that gravitas that we hear people talk about so much, it's something that you feel, it's not really something that can be defined, but boy, I trust them, I believe in them, and they seem at ease as who they are. They're not constantly wondering how they're being judged and questioning how people are interpreting what they're saying. So think about your body language and it being open. Does everything you shared in the interview sound like me, 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 me? It cannot come across as I had the vision, I did the execution, I made sure that, we won the account or that was brought across the finish line. It does have to come across, as my third point has been made, is focused outward on others. A true leader is never focused on themselves. They're focused on other people and how they're going to help other people grow. And when I say that about a leader, again, I am such a believer that it's not about the title. It is about who you are and the role you play on the team as a person who can make sure you're coming to the table with a positive attitude and the confidence and also the initiative to get things done and wanting to collaborate and to row the same direction. All of those things are important as you go through your interview and thinking about how do I balance that? Well, let me tell you all the things that I've accomplished in my career and not know when to stop talking versus I've given you just enough information to talk about my expertise and my experience. And so if there's a follow-up question, I can answer that. But at this point in time, I'm giving you enough detail to where I'm not going to beat a dead horse on it. So confidence versus arrogance. And then we move into post-interview. Before departing, you want to make sure that you ask them about their timeline in making a decision about the candidate they're going to choose. I say this for yourself because you do not want to be wondering every single day, have they filled the position, have they not filled the position? Some companies never send a letter out to the candidates saying, thank you so much for your interview. We have filled the position. Please continue to watch our website as other positions get posted. They don't do that. And so then you sit and fret all day long. And then the opposite of that is calling the HR manager to ask them, has a decision been made? And of course, you don't want to come across desperate. And, in most cases, you need this job. And if you don't need this job, it's a job that you really want. But you can't come across as though it's this job or no job ever. And so I always say that because I think it helps people to understand, you know what, I can probably give a call on this day or drop an email on this day and see where they are in the process. Secondly, it is okay to send an email of appreciation or even a text of appreciation, but you also have to write a handwritten note. There is just something in our world that has gone awry. We hardly ever see handwriting anymore, right? But that's something that is really intimate. Even if it's 2 sentences that you have jotted down, thanking them for the time that they've taken to interview you and the excitement that you would have if you were given the position, but then being able to lick the envelope and put a stamp and address it goes to show that you've actually gone a few extra steps than a lot of people go in our world today. So I always say, sure, email them, text them, but then surprise them with a handwritten note. And then if you said something that you were going to be giving them as a follow-up, and they said, well, well, we'd like an example of that, or do you mind sharing this, that you would be able to do that in a timely manner. I go back to the early conversation about the media. A reporter doesn't call and seek information and to have an interview with you for you to say, well, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Our world moves way too fast today, and people usually don't want to wait on that. And the more careful you are about things like that and show that you can follow through on something, the more likelihood that you're going to have that extra check mark by your name versus an X that says, well, we asked for this, but they must have forgotten. So if you think about all of the things for which we have shared today, it really is all about preparation. And you don't necessarily need to go into an interview thinking all I can really do is just share my story and tell them what I know. You have to be thinking about what it is that I want them to know. What are those examples that I have that are concrete, that show my successes and the work that I've accomplished? What questions do I have to make sure this is going to be a right fit for me in this company? And what is my body language telling them? Am I looking at them? Am I smiling? Is my whole body crossed, or is it open and willing to answer the questions that are asked of me? And do I do it in a way that looks like I am confident in taking on this role and not arrogant in going about that? And then have I tied a nice bow on this gift in which I am letting them know that I really appreciate their time? So if there's anything I can ever do for you, please reach out to me, Blake Woolsey. As I mentioned, I'm on LinkedIn, as well as you can find me on Facebook, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have, or to answer anything that maybe I didn't address today that you are curious about. So with that, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much, Blake.
Was that okay?
Yes.